My name is Alan Cooper. I'm the Associate Dean of the Robert B. Williams School of Business here at Adelphi University. I want to thank you all for coming and welcome you. I'd like to take a moment to first introduce Doug Flynn. Doug is the co-founder of Flynn Zito Capital Management, LLC, a wealth management company located right here in Garden City. He is also an alumnus of Adelphi University and has continued to give back to the school and the community since his graduation. Through both the Flynn Zito Capital Management Scholarship Fund and internship program, Doug has made sure to keep his ties with Adelphi as strong as ever. Doug is officially a certified financial planner professional and a chartered financial consultant, and his firm specializes in providing high net worth individuals, business owners, widows, media personalities, professional athletes, and other high-profile clientele with comprehensive financial planning, private wealth management, and fiercely independent investment management services for the unique needs of each client. He has been in practice since he graduated from Adelphi. You may also know him from his numerous appearances on national television and radio programs such as CNN, Fox, and CNBC, or his interviews in nearly every major publication, including the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Money Magazine, and more. He also has credited contributions to 5 best-selling personal finance books, including the book our event today is helping to launch. Smart is the New Rich, Money Guide for the Millennials by Christine Romans, which just came out last week. Please welcome the recently crowned second most followed financial advisor on Twitter with 30,000 followers. Hopefully after tonight he'll be the first. Our very own Doug Flynn.
Thank you, Alan, everybody. That was very nice. I appreciate that very much. I wanted to say that I stood before you in this very spot, or stood at the university in this very spot when I went to school here, but as you probably know, this building didn't exist when I went to school here. And there's a lot of new buildings here, and that's actually fantastic to see the university grow as it has and where it's going. But it's with great pleasure now that I get to introduce to you someone that I have a great deal of respect for. And not only because she's CNN's chief business correspondent, or that she's the official explainer-in-chief of all things money for CNN, but because she covers the news from the perspective of American workers and small business owners, and that's a really unique perspective. Christine Romans graduated from Iowa State University, and she began her career reporting for Reuters and Knight Ridder Financial News in the futures trading pits of Chicago, covering bonds, monetary policy, derivatives, and commodities. She joined CNN Business News in 1999, and I had actually been appearing there as a guest for some time. So when Christine joined, I had the wonderful opportunity first to meet her, eventually get to know her and work with her over the years. At that time, Christine spent a couple years reporting directly from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and eventually became an anchor on one of the financial programs. Currently, as you may know, if you turn your TV on any weekday morning from 4 to 6 a.m., you'll see her as the co-anchor of Early Start on CNN. Now, for the non-millennials in the office, that's probably something part of your early morning routine before you go to work, or maybe it is. And for the millennials, this might be something when you get home late at night before you go to bed that you turn on the television. And there's Christine. Christine's also an award-winning journalist. She won an Emmy Award for her work Exporting America, about globalization and the outsourcing of American jobs. Last year, she crossed the country reporting for her series, Is College Worth It? And you can feel free to ask her that question if you'd like. And previously, she co-hosted several well-regarded investigative reports. Her special, In God We Trust, Faith and Money in America, explored how our religious values govern the way we think about and spend our money. She has anchored the first democratic elections in Iraq's history from the CNN Center in Atlanta. She's covered 4 hurricanes and 4 presidential elections. And she was part of the team that earned CNN a Peabody Award for its Hurricane Katrina coverage, as well as a DuPont Award for the coverage of the tsunami disaster in Southeast Asia. In addition to all of this, Christine is also the author of 3 personal finance books. Smart is the New Rich, If You Can't Afford It, Put It Down, How to Speak Money, and Smart is the New Rich, Money Guide for Millennials, which just came out, as Alan said, last week, and is what we're here to talk about tonight. I'm privileged that she asked me to contribute to each of her books, and Christine, I really do appreciate that honor, and thank you. Finally, one little known fact about Christine I think you might like to know is, now I don't know if we have any fans of the HBO show Newsroom in the audience, but if we do, Olivia Munn's character Sloane was based on Christine. So without further ado, won't you please join me in welcoming the real-life Newsroom star and the most sincere person I know in television news, Christine Romans.
I have known Doug for a long time, and I have used his expertise extensively, and that beautiful, beautiful introduction proves that neither of us are millennials, if we can go back to 1999. But we have been talking about money and talking about how people make money, spend money, and feel about money for a very long time, and I thank you, Doug and Rich, for all of your help over the years trying to explain that to my audiences on CNN. A little bit earlier, you probably saw up here something called my prosperity formula. It's really simple. I mean, it's really simple, but it's something that generations of Americans have had a hard time kind of getting their head around. Prosperity is earnings minus spending, that equals savings. Savings times time equals wealth. And time is what millennials have, and it's why I wrote the book, really, because you read all of this gloom and doom about millennials. They have all this student loan debt. They're not getting jobs. They want to, they want to be promoted right away at the office, and hiring managers don't know how to integrate them with the other generations at work. And all, I mean, if you Google millennials at work, it's laughable almost. And I don't buy any of that conventional wisdom, because I think that this generation is so exciting for how it's going to change how we work and how we live. I mean, it's the biggest generation there is. I think there's, depending on how you measure it, it's either 80 to 91 million people are millennials. That's bigger than the baby boomers. So what you want, how you buy things, what you do at work, how you live your life, where you live, what you drive is going to change how all of us live. And that's really, really exciting. So I want to talk about wealth, not because I'm greedy or I want you to be rich or wealth makes you happy. Wealth is not about greed, it's about choices, and I want you to have choices. I want you to be able to decide you want to take some time off when you want to have your babies. I want you to be able to decide you want to move halfway across the country and try a new job because you have a little bit of a cushion, because you have a little bit of wealth, because you've saved and invested and made some smart choices when you're young, because you have time. You have 40 years of time. And I know that sounds crazy when you're just trying to get out of college, but you have the most valuable thing in any kind of investing or life-building scenario. It's time, and you have it in spades. Nobody can take it away from you, and it's free. So you can build from that, and that's what's so really exciting. You know, the demographers and the people who are trying to sell you stuff, they have this acronym for you. They call you Henry. High earner, not rich yet. Because you're so educated, and you know what you want, you're so tech savvy, that all the big people trying to figure out how to sell you stuff, they call a big chunk of this millennial generation Henry and Henrietta for short, but Henry and Henrietta, you are high earners, or you will be, but not rich yet. So they're trying to sell you on technology, on cars, they're trying to sell you financial products, they're trying to get your brand loyalty early. You really actually hold all the cards, and everyone assumes you're going to, the people who are trying to sell you stuff assume that you guys are going to make it. So don't believe any of that, any of the negative background noise. You guys are you're going to make it. And here's one way I can tell you that I'm sure you're going to change the way we do things. There is an income gap in America. Women make less than men for the same job. We can argue until the cows come home about why. It could be discrimination, it could be women don't negotiate strongly enough, it could be men are more aggressive, it could be hiring managers tend to be men and so they hire men, whatever. We could argue about that. That's a sociology or an economics question. But there's one little tranche, one little cohort in the demographics that do not bear that out, do not bear out that women make less than men for the same job. Do you know who that is? College-educated millennials in big cities who don't have children and aren't married yet. Basically you when you get out of college. That's where the playing field is completely level. And that's why I get so excited about thinking how you guys are going to have these choices. You guys are going to have this very different way of doing things when you go into the workforce. And you want different things from your money. I mean, all the surveys show that you don't want to climb straight up a ladder. You want value for your job. You don't want to work 9 to 5, you know, maybe the way the Gen Xers did and the baby boomers did, you know, just notching up your time and moving up and getting a 3% raise. You want to feel good about what you're doing, and you want to do good with your job and with your money, and that's different. That's a different kind of philosophy, and there's so many of you. If that's what you're demanding at the workforce, all of us are going to work a little bit differently. One of my specialties at CNN is I do the job. I'm the jobs market expert, and there's 3 things about the jobs market I want you to know about. The jobless rate for college graduates is 2.9%. I'm going to say that again. The jobless rate for college graduates is 2.9%. Now, there are a lot of other numbers out there that show that recent college graduates may not be working in their major, or they may have higher unemployment rates, and that is true. But overall, that college degree definitely pays off. The jobless rate's the lowest in 6 years. Is probably going to keep falling. That's good for you. You guys are coming into it at the best. Who's graduating this year? Is anybody here graduating this year? Is anybody who's graduating next year? You guys are coming into it at the best time. I just asked the Treasury Secretary last week. We were in Miami doing a port story. I interviewed the Treasury Secretary, and you know, we talked about Russian sanctions and interest rate policy and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I said, hey, what's your advice to kids in college right now? And he said, it's going to be great for you. It's going to be great for you. Try something new. Take a risk. Don't worry, because all of the bad stuff is behind us, and the economy is growing, and companies are hiring again. They want young talent. They want young talent in engineering and finance. They want nurses. They want economics. I mean, there's marketing. There's so many things that they're in demand for now, and they want young talent. They want you. And so you have every reason to be optimistic right now. In the height of the recession, there were 7 unemployed people for every 1 job opening. Today, there's just about 2 unemployed people for every job opening. It's getting better. You have to beat out 1 other person for the job. Those are great odds, you know? So when you're out there interviewing, think about what is the one thing that's going to set you apart from 1 other person. And that's how you need to think about the job market. One thing I'm worried about, though, about you guys is that 40% of the typical millennial budget is going to housing. So you got a housing issue here. And the big advice I've been giving over the last week or so is if you've got who here is going to graduate with student loan debt? Just out of curiosity. So if you have a lot of student loan debt, I mean, my biggest piece of advice is live at home. And for a Gen Xer, maybe some of your parents are saying, oh, good God, no. For a Gen Xer, that was you failed if you moved home. You know, you weren't supposed to do that. You're supposed to move to get an apartment, move to a city, you know, grow your life. It's different. You got to get rid of the student loan debt as quickly as you can so you can move forward and start investing. I mean, I want all of you to be investing in some way by the time you're 25. There are 2 kinds of people in the world, the kind who invest and the kind who don't invest. And you want to be in the group that is investing. You want to have, I mean, it is the biggest barrier to entry to wealth and growing wealth are people who are too afraid of the stock market. And your generation is afraid of the stock market. All of the studies show you're more like the greatest generation. You're more like the people who came after World War II who are afraid of the system. I'm not saying put all your money in it. I'm saying you need to know about it. You need to have a little brokerage account, and you need to understand how a stock goes up and down is based on earnings. You need to know what bonds are. Bonds are, I mean, actually, money in a savings account isn't getting you anything right now, but things are going to be changing. Interest rates are going to be rising. There are going to be some more opportunities. You need to know what those things are. And it's easy. It's easy. It's all out there. I mean, your generation, you don't have to go to a finance class. I mean, you could go online. There's so many things that you can buy a book called Smart is the New Rich, Money Guide for Millennials, and you can get a lot of these tools that you need, but I want you investing by the time you're 25. Okay, so here's, even earlier if you can. So a lot of people tell me, I can't invest. How can I invest? I have all the student loan debt, I have to pay, you know, I had to pay all this money every month. There's a couple of things you need to know about. There are income-based repayment programs for student loan plans. That means you get into one of these income-based repayment plans, and you will pay, I think 10% of your pay every month will go to your student loans. 10%. So that gives you flexibility so that you can be building your life. You know, you're not going to be paying half your money on your student loan bills. If you, and Doug and Rich know this better than anybody else, if you invest in a 401k at work, it actually lowers your adjusted gross income, so you actually can pay a little bit less on your student loans if you want. Or you start an IRA, another kind of tax advantage retirement account. You need to be in a tax-advantaged retirement account, even if you are paying on your student loans. You got to get in there. You got to get in there and just see what it's like and have that time work for you and put you on that path forward. So pay your high-interest credit card debt, your highest interest student loans if you have private student loans, your federal student loans, and you can be investing all at the same time. And you really should be. You really should be. That's a really exciting thing for you. 47% of millennials spend at least half of their paychecks paying off their debt. Wow, that's a lot of money. I mean, half of your money is going to pay the past, not the future. You got to try to get that debt down as much as you can. And part of that debt, if it's student loan debt, you got to graduate in 4 years. In my mind, that is the biggest debt crisis for kids. The student loan debt crisis is not graduating in 4 years, unless you are in an engineering program or a program that needs a 5 years. But 39% of college kids graduate in 4 years. At $20,000 a year and on borrowed money, that's just like crazy math. That math just doesn't make any sense. Every borrowed dollar is going to be $2 when you pay it back. You borrow 20 grand for school, you're not paying 20 grand back, you're paying a lot more than that. By the same token, any dollar you're investing today, you're not getting $1 out down the road, you're getting $2 or $3 out down the road. The last 6 years have been amazing for investors, for people who, when the whole world was falling apart, had the confidence, the wherewithal, the crazy nerve to put a little money in the stock market. That has been a really good return for people. And the people who were too scared missed out. And that's a shame. So I want you to invest. I want you to think about. Your student loan debts. I want you to think about I want to know a little bit more about you too. We're going to have. I want a lot of questions. So let me just try to get a sense of a little bit more of who you are. Who here are business school, finance, economics? Can you raise your hand if you're in business? Great. How about nursing? Do we have any nursing? Any nursing? Social work? I know you guys have a school of social work. Humanities, sciences. The sciences, a lot of business people. I bet you guys are getting extra credit, aren't you? That's so cool. You capitalists, I love it. Couple of things here. If you borrow a lot of money, look, you're going to make more money if you're an economics major, a business major, an engineering major. You just are. Engineers are the top 8 of the top 10 highest paid careers are engineers. $68,000, $70,000 starting out. They can afford to take on more student loan debt. Social work, those careers start in the low 30s to the mid 30s. Here's something really exciting though. In 2007, Congress, bipartisan, I can't believe that could happen, Congress passed this law to make sure that we are still incentivizing people to do all kinds of jobs. So it's something called public service loan forgiveness. If you work in your field as a social worker, a teacher, a defense attorney, a public defender, anything that is something that is for the public good. After 10 years of paying your student loans on time, the government's going to wipe out the rest of your student loan debt. Have you guys heard about this? It's like a student loan hack nobody knows about. The government will wipe out the rest of your student loan debt if you work in public service for 10 years. So that's meant to inspire people to go into social work, to go into public health doctors and nurses, people who would otherwise have to take on a whole bunch of student loan debt and may not ever be rewarded for it. The government's going to reward you for it. Public service loan forgiveness, remember that. For the rest of you, pay your loans off in 10 years. Start investing by the time you're 25. I would invest by the time you're 21. I started investing when I was 21. Is anybody here in college investing already? Any of you business folks? It's been a great couple of years, hasn't it? It's been unbelievable. Doug and Rich, what do we think? Double-digit gains in the stock market going forward, or is it going to be more steady as she goes? Probably steady. The easy money's been made? Okay, high single digits? I hope so. I hope so. You want to be a part of that investing class. You want to be a part of the investing class, and you want to be a part of the investing class very, very early. For me, it was a boss who sat me down and said, you need to invest in a 401k. And I said, a what? And he said, you need to invest in a 401k. And he said, I'm going to put 20% of your money in it. And I said, 20%? But I need all that money. He said, you didn't have this paycheck last week, so you don't actually need it. You didn't have the money. You have to pay yourself first. Pay yourself first, and you'll be happy about it down the road. The last thing I want to talk about that's in the book, and then I want to wrap up because I want your questions, is the love and money stuff. Because you guys have a very interesting, you're in a space that nobody else has been in. The oxygen in your atmosphere is all of this student loan debt. Do you ask somebody, before you get serious about them, how much debt do you have? Would any of you ever ask somebody how much debt they have, say, before you got serious? You're smart. You would too? I think you can use I think you can. I did a piece on this on CNN Money, and it was basically viral. People wanted to know things like, wait, I don't have any student loan debt, but if I marry somebody with student loan debt, do I get their student loan debt? And wait, if I want to get a car, or I want to lease a car or buy an apartment, does that student loan debt count against mine? These are like the kinds of questions that people are asking. It bears talking to your friends about it. Just talk to your friends, and if you're dating, talk about it, because money and love are a toxic combination in any generation, and you guys have a new and interesting dynamic on that. I want to wrap up here just by quickly saying that time is the most important thing for you. I want to hear what you want to know about money, about investing, about how to get a job, how to ask for a raise. These are all things that I cover in the book. How to manage student debt and other debts. There's a way you can triage it all, and it's very simple, but it's different for every person. You need to manage your money like it's a part-time job in the early going. You really do, and it'll be so rewarding for you. I know millennials don't like to talk about budgeting, but you know, it's super, super important, and you will be paying yourself back in spades. The last thing I will say is, you guys are going to change the world. What you do with your money, how you spend your money, it's going to change the world. Don't listen to anything negative somebody says about your generation. Our generation, we're a bunch of slackers from the reality bites generation who invented grunge with flannel shirts in Seattle, and we're never going to make anything out of themselves, and we all did just fine. So don't listen to anything negative people say, and I want you all to be prosperous, not to be greedy, but to have choices in your life going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Is this working? No? Yes? Hello? No? Well, I'll yell. So it's time for Q&A. This is the fun part. You get to ask Christine whatever you would like.
So for someone who has a job and is just starting out, what should you do to start really investing?
So for someone who has a job and is just starting out, what should you do to start investing? Okay, so last week I interviewed these guys who have this new app called Robinhood, which is a no-fee investing with no minimum. You could literally take $75 and buy, what can you buy a share of for $75? I don't know, you can buy a share of, I think you can get McDonald's for it, but that's assuming you think McDonald's stock is going to go up. So I would just buy a stock, go to E-Trade, Scottrade, any of the brokerages, and just look around and see what kind of resources they have. I mean, you're not in a position to get a financial planner or financial manager because you probably don't have very much money. But I want you to know what it's about. I want you to go to cnnmoney.com. I want you to read the personal finance and the investing columns and just get the lay of the land and the lingo, and you'll feel more comfortable. A lot of people are afraid of investing. They go, oh, that's for people who know about money. Well, you know, investing is really simple. You look at a company, you decide if you're talking about stock investing, you look at that company, you think, well, I think that company's going to make more money next year and the stock will go up. And so I'm going to buy a share of that company. Very simple proposition. In the end, you want stocks, you want bonds, you want real estate, you want a whole bunch of different things, and that's where a financial planner comes into play, when they can really, the smart people. The reason why I say eventually you need to see a financial planner or money manager is because you can know an awful lot about your teeth, but you would never give yourself a root canal. The same kind of thing for money. You know, you can know an awful lot of money, but you wouldn't actually give yourself a financial root canal. So I would go to one of those apps and I would buy a stock as soon as you can.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we have the microphone working. So next question, I think I have another book. Same book, but it's okay. Who else? Questions?
Somebody way over there.
Way over there, I see.
So I'm an international student here. I wondered how international students invest their money in the United States?
Oh, that's a good question. How can an international student invest their money in the United States? You can buy stocks in a stock account. A lot of people are buying real estate, but those people have a lot of money. I don't know if you can buy a house, but some of the investments that are coming into the United States, because when people look at the United States compared with the rest of the world, they see stability, they see a rule of law, they see a place to park assets. I mean, it's why in Manhattan right now, people are buying real estate from all over the world because the U.S. is the the sort of the safest place to be, and it's a slow-growing economy, but doing well. I would say the same thing. I would give you the same advice that I gave her. I would open a stock account. I mean, I would buy a share of stock and just watch. You know, I always say buy what you know, and I'll give you an example. When I lived in Brooklyn, this was like in 2006, I noticed all of these Apple boxes, like Apple computer boxes, Apple boxes on the pickup day for cardboard. And every week there were more of them. And I was like, gosh, I should buy some Apple stock. I think the shares were $30 a share at the time. And they went up, and they went up, and they went up. $30 a share, I think they're, were they 600 now? Or how much? Right, it got to $875 before the split. $875. I knew somebody else who started buying Apple at $2 and put in his initial investment again every time it doubled. I think he's got like a yacht now or something. He's just a regular person. He was a regular person. He's no financial professional. What I'm saying is buy what you know. If you look at McDonald's, you say, hey, I think McDonald's is changing its menu and they're going to try to appeal to millennials and they've had a really hard time, and McDonald's share is pretty cheap and it does pay a dividend. I don't know if it does pay a dividend, but I think it does. Pays a dividend. I want to buy McDonald's. I'm just giving you this example. That's how you start to think about investing. And buy what you know and watch it and get to know the rhythm and the ticks of the company, and then that can translate into other asset classes.
How do you ask for more money without taking yourself out of the running for a position, potentially for a female or even for a male?
That is such a good question. And you know, I spent a lot of time talking to millennials for this book, and they all ask that and wondering about that question, which is why I love the number that there's no pay disparity for your generation at this point. That tells me that you're starting from a better position. Look, Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In, is everyone here familiar with Sheryl Sandberg and Lean In? She has another book called Lean In for Graduates. But she talks about this phenomena where, you know, we tell little girls they're bossy and little boys are confident. And there's like this thing about being bossy, you know? Well, bossy is confident, and bossy isn't necessarily a bad word. And women go into a job interview or a review for their job, and you have to be kind of careful about coming off as someone who is bossy. You want to come off as confident. The best way to do that is to show what you have earned or what you have done for the company. Give accomplishments. Show very specific, concrete things, and be firm and confident. And that usually is what wins the way. Sheryl Sandberg writes a lot about this. A lot of women who are in Silicon Valley in particular talk about this and write about this because their accomplishments really shine through. They can say, oh, I took this company public, or, you know, I bought these 3 apps, or you know, they can very specifically point to what they've accomplished. But if it's your first job, you know, what do you have to show, really? So show that you're a leader, be confident, show what you've accomplished either in student organizations or in internships and the like. And you don't have to be too forceful, I don't think. You can also ask for a little more money. When they give you a number, say, well, can you tell me what the range is for that number? Just yesterday, a woman told me that she was offered, I think she said she was offered $42,000. She said, I'll take $44,000. And they said, okay. And she was just like blown away. You know, she didn't know that there was room to ask for a little bit more. The worst they can do is say no. One of the reasons why many people think that there's this big pay disparity, especially for my generation, for Generation X, is that when we took our first jobs, we didn't ask, women didn't ask for more money. Men tended to ask for more money. So men started a little bit higher than women, and then every time you get a raise, that gap just keeps going like this. So be confident. Be aware that maybe the other person might have a bias to think confident is bossy. Just know that's in your head, and show what you have done in other endeavors that make you a leader.
After somebody finishes an undergraduate degree, would it be smarter to continue to go to grad school right away, or to look for a job first and then continue grad school later on?
It depends. My experience has been that once you get out and you get in the workforce, you tend to want to stay in the workforce because now you're making money and you're on your path. It depends on what is your degree field? In marketing. There's a lot of demand right now for marketing. Marketing has I mean, when we were talking to a lot of people who are doing the campus hiring, I mean, for marketing, I mean, if it were me and I had a job offer, I'd go get a job. I'd get the job. I really would. Because that experience in the field is just incredibly important, you know? I always wanted to go back and get my MBA, and I didn't because I kept, sorry.
Okay.
But I kept.
You still can.
All right, we'll talk after.
We'll talk afterwards.
But I kept like loving the job that I was doing and kept doing more and kept doing more and kept doing more. So to the other part of your question, do I wish I had done it right after? Maybe. Maybe, but everything worked out okay for me. You know, I mean, it's what you make of it. It's what you make of it. And a good example is my husband. My husband is here. He he was sort of the gatekeeper, the quality control of this whole project. And he also is an editor. He's an editor at Reuters. We have completely different educational backgrounds. I went to public school. I went to Iowa State, a land-grant university, you know, a state school, did not go to grad school, and started working for newspapers. He went to private school, Catholic school, Jesuit college, NYU, master's degree at NYU, master's degree at NYU, you know, like, so I didn't pay much, he paid a lot, we ended up in the same newsroom with basically the same job. See, it's really what you do with it, so I wouldn't agonize too much about making the wrong choice, you know?
Okay, so my question is, how is it being a woman in the workforce and juggling like your family life? So I know that you and your husband both work together, but did you have to take off more time for the kids and stuff like that? And did that ever come into play with your financial situation?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. Because women, especially women, Gen X women, we talk about this endlessly. And Sheryl Sandberg, in her book Lean In, and then Arianna Huffington, who's a friend of mine, wrote a book called Strive, which I always joke is like leaning back. And so Sheryl Sandberg is telling me to lean in, and here, I'll give that to you for, and Arianna Huffington is telling me to do yoga 3 times a week in the middle of the day. If I do yoga in the middle of the day 3 times a week, my kids aren't gonna get fed, you know? I mean, I can't have time to do yoga. But there are these 2 competing philosophies about women in the workplace. And I have had a pretty good go of it, in part because I work this really early morning shift. I've made my job work for me. So I go to work really in the morning, and then I get home, and then I pick up the kids from school, and I'm able to have a home life and work. I'm exhausted. I've had jet lag basically for 8 years, but I've managed to make it work, and I'm always amazed how I see other women making it work. I'll tell you a quick story about, do you know who Candy Crowley is? She's one of the first women ever to moderate a vice presidential debate. She's just a very well-known political reporter. And when I was pregnant with my second child, she came up to me and she said, you know, when I started in the newsroom in the 1970s, there were no pregnant women around. Nobody wanted to see a pregnant woman around. You know, you had to like step off, have your baby, and then go back into the newsroom again later. And it's a completely different place now. You know, people embrace families, men and women embrace families, you know. Men are doing much more of everything now. It's never 50-50, and when people say work-life balance, they're crazy. There's no such thing as, it's always unbalanced. Sometimes he does everything, sometimes I do more. It just depends on where you are in the cycle, and you have to be really flexible about it. And it's exciting, it's fun. I can't wait to see what it's gonna be like for you guys. I really can't. Hopefully we'll have better, you know, we don't have good maternity laws here. You know, we don't, you know, women work 6 weeks after they've had a baby, but maybe that'll change. It's up to you guys.
Throughout your years of experience, what has been the most challenging part of your job?
That's a really good question. The most challenging part of my job was the financial crisis, because I knew I had been working in business news for 15 years, and I could sort of see what was coming down the pike, and it was really scary. And it was scary to me because, you know, when the chairman of the Federal Reserve, I'd covered the Fed, I'd covered monetary policy for a long time, and when people in Washington were telling their wives, because they were mostly men, telling their wives to go get $5,000 out of the ATM machine because we didn't know if they were going to work the next day, that was really scary. That was scary. Those were scary days. And I think a lot of people forget how scary that was. And because the world didn't visually fall apart, we forget how crazy and terrible that was. That was scary because I knew that I had to be confident and not afraid on television, but explain to people what was happening and how serious it was. Also covering hurricanes. I do not like to cover hurricanes. I do not like flying stop signs. I do not like flying pieces of 2x4s and plywood, and hurricanes are really horrible to cover. Other people love covering hurricanes. I'm not one of those people. I just am not. I would much rather cover a jobs report on Friday from the Bureau of Labor Statistics than I would going down to New Orleans. fact, I need to go to New Orleans for a reason that's not a hurricane just to get it out of my system.
My question is that it's not always predictable about the stock rates. So is there any other options or choices, as you say, for other than investment for the students?
Are there other choices except for investments for students?
Like, we are not that adept to this like rise and fall of the stock rates.
Right.
So
the thing is that you have to take a long-term view. On everything, you have to take a long-term view, and you have to be diversified, and you have to be balanced. That's what I would say. You know, you cannot react to the stock market going up and the stock market going down. You should just, I mean, what I like are ETFs, exchange-traded funds that are a basket of things that track the S&P 500 or track, say, you're interested in something else or real estate, and then you just buy it, set it, and forget it. That's what I really think is probably the best option. Savings, if you put your money in the bank right now, you're not getting anything. In fact, in some parts of the world, you're getting less, you're paying to put your money in the bank. It is the craziest thing. I can remember my grandpa, when I was a little girl, he had these CDs, certificates of deposit, at 14%. Now, in another world, I would tell you, put your money in a certificate of deposit and you'll get 14% interest. But you can't get that. So that's why the stock market is still basically the best and only game in town. Am I right, guys? Yeah.
How important is generational specific advice? Because sometimes it's tough to get caught up, like easy to get caught up in like millennial specific like financial trends and stuff. How important is it to pay attention to like what for millennials as opposed to like general advice?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that all of the advice is the same, except guess what? My generation doesn't have the time anymore. You do have the time. So the advice is you got to act on it now. You know what I mean? The other thing is that you do think differently about work, and I think that's going to be a real game changer. You know, this time is different for you guys. I mean, they always say every generation is different, but you are different. You look at Pew. Pew took 5 generations and it gave them a list of words to describe themselves. Every generation listed the same set of words except yours. Every generation had either number 1 or number 2 was work ethic. You guys didn't even choose that word. Right? So that terrifies hiring managers and small business owners who think, oh my God, these kids don't want to work. And they come in and they just want to get a promotion. And they read lean in. And so these women are coming in and saying, no, I'm worth more than that. And they're like, oh my God, I have to pay them more than that. That's actually, that excites me. I think that's great. And that's how you are different. And that's how the generational advice is different. You also, the surveys all show you want to save your money. And that worries me a little bit because I think you could miss out on some great opportunities in those 40 years if you invest like your grandparents or great-grandparents who didn't invest, put their money under the mattress, and you're not getting any money for your money under the mattress. I also think you're pretty risk-averse. And for a generation that has been brought up on technology and innovation and all the exit polls at the elections show, you guys change your mind and you value people who change your mind. You don't take risks like other generations have, and sometimes taking risks is what grows businesses and gives you new opportunities. So those are just some of the little differences that I would say.
At what point in your life can you justify spending money on things that you don't necessarily need, but things that you want?
When you have enough money. But the problem is, we have grown up where we have instant gratification, don't we? We really do. I say America is like me more now. Me more now. We can have whatever we want. Yet we're all one cracked iPhone screen away from financial disaster. I don't want you to be one cracked iPhone screen away from financial disaster. I want you to have a little bit of a cushion. I think, the high earner, not rich yet, the Henry moniker that you have, you do spend money on things that you want that make you feel good. And that's okay as long as you're putting something away and you're going to be able, you guys could live to be 100 years old, right? You got to save some money. Geez, I'm not paying for you.
So I'm a graduating senior this year, and I find myself in this particular situation along with a lot of my friends. I am taking a year off between grad school, and I got a job, and I have the opportunity to invest in a 401k. Do you think it's worth it for the year,
yes.
or should? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If anybody ever offers you the chance to invest in a 401k, you are absolutely crazy not to. It's free money. There's usually a match. It's free. You just should. Even if it's just because it's an entree of getting into the whole, yeah, you should. You should. You absolutely should. And I'll tell you one other thing. So this week there was a new number. The savings rate in America is 5.8%, and everyone said, oh, the savings rate's too high. The economy's not going to grow fast enough. We're saving too much money, which is true. But it needs to be higher than that. You personally need to save more than that. And people I know who are successful, there's two things about them. They either really socked a lot of money away and invested a lot of money and saved. They lived, they lived well, so far below their means that they were always investing and putting something away to grow. Warren Buffett says, you know, someone's sitting under the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. No one's planting the tree for you. You do not have a pension. You might not even get offered a 401k. It's going to be DIY. Your financial life is do it yourself. And so you have to plant the tree, and that's super, I mean, that's super important. Put away, what'd you tell me? High double digits. The most successful people I know have lived on 70% of their money, and the other 30 they had working for them. And that's the truth. The other quality is or there's somebody who takes a lot of risks, like Mark Zuckerberg, who could take a lot of risks, you know. But that's it. Thank you. Yes, to give to.
Well, I want to thank Christine. I want to thank Flynn Zito. I would like to thank myself, no, just the Williams School of Business, all the students and the faculty. Thank you for coming. It was wonderful. I've learned a lot, and I'm not a millennial, although I'd like to think I am, but I'm not really. And with that, have a safe trip home. Thank you very much.